Hey everybody, thank you for joining me. If you're going to join me, we'll see what happens here. I'm going to give it a couple seconds. But just to start things off, my name is Todd Mariana, and I also go by opcode 66. And the efforts that I put into final mastering fall under Deep Grooves Mastering. So I've, over the years, done actual lacquer masters and one-offs, and for myself as a career. Well, I should say as a side income, side hustle, and then started to make cloned parts. And in fact, later tonight I will be I'll be posting a cloned part on eBay. So some folks might be interested in that. I'll be posting a round half nut for VMS lathe. It's one of the few that I have remaining to sell to people, and they've been highly recommended. Anyway, I'm gonna get going here. So I just got this box. It is a Presto 5C from a client. I don't know this person personally. They sought me out. I have taped over stuff that should be identifiable for them or this particular shipment, the tracking of it. So let's get this guy open, shall we? Also too, let's get this out of the way as well. The music that you hear in this stream was written by myself and somebody that goes by the name K-Rad, K-R-A-D. And you can find stuff on YouTube for K-Rad. His name is Chris Grabowski. You can also go to his website, which is Pad K-Rad. So you can Google that. I think it's pad-krad.com. I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, I can post links to stuff when I post this stream to YouTube. I will post some links. So if you enjoy the music you hear here this evening, you can definitely go and check his other stuff out. I haven't really written anything since I worked with him that I would want to post. I have mostly spent my time working on, cutting technology. It looks like my kitty wants to be a part of tonight's festivities, so we'll get a chair for him. My kitty's old and he's not doing too good, so I'm kind of a little upset about that. But try not to cry right now thinking about it. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, the music, that's right, is me and Chris, and what you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen is video mixing that I did at various events that I either put on and DJ'd at, or just DJ'd at, or whatever. But I also would do visuals. So there was myself and Brian Gardner and his wife Brenda, and Javon Jackson, and for some time a guy named Tommy Ruffingers, who's got a number of different aliases. I don't even remember all of them. Anyway, so Tom, we all used to put on some events in Chicago over the years, and I was lucky enough to be part of all of that. And so what you're seeing on the right, again, I worked out how to do some video mixing, and I would record the sessions, and that's what you're seeing on the right. So Some of that is, clips that I curated from licensed, movies or documentaries or whatnot. But as you can see, I totally reworked that source material. So this is a reinterpretation. Same as the music, there will be probably a sample or two in there, but it's been reworked and it's a reinterpretation, and so it's fair use that I'm claiming for all of that. So this is not like I'm streaming some network broadcast or something. So now that we got all of that out of the way, let's dive in, shall we? And just in case, because I don't know where this box has been or who's handled it or anything else, I am actually going to be wearing a mask for tonight as well. Just to be safe. And I highly recommend that everyone else in any situation where things might not be safe, please be safe, wear a mask. All right, just making sure that there's nothing in here like a note, instructions or something, so don't want that to be exposed. Okay, it looks like it's just the head. So here we are. Let's zoom in a bit. And I think I've sort of resolved my focusing issue, so we should be able to have some good, relatively okay focus. Zoomed in here, we'll see. Oh, maybe not. It's trying. Oh, no, okay, so we're still same problem. Oh, at some point I need to get a better camera, maybe when I get thousands of followers and Patreon. I'm totally joking, I'm never gonna get there. That's a joke. When I've got some spare cash to invest, I will buy a new camera. And it looks like there was a little something, and he said, good. He followed the instructions and removed the set screw. So that's cool. I usually attach it to something solid. That's also funny. I can tell that this guy orders parts, clearly, because there's a parts bag. He orders something, either machining gear or electronics parts or whatever. That's a parts bag. And then this is what I just pulled out, which is the set screw. This is the very common old school set screw for this style of cutter head. So, and it looks, oh man, it is. It's pretty rusty. I wonder if I can do this. Sort of. Well, actually, I wonder if I can do this. Here, hold on a second. Hold on. That's not gonna work either, really. All right, well, suffice it to say, whether you can see it or not, that thing is pretty, yeah, whether you guys can see it or not, that thing's pretty grody, I gotta say. There we go. So a lot of that will clean up, and I've actually got a new solution that I've started to use to remove rust, specifically rust, not to bathe every part in, but just rust, things that have rust, and that definitely has some corrosion on it. So these are the original, style of audio connectors for the Presto lathes, and they would just simply stab into, just skewer into these little things that, have holes. Let me see if I have my cable handy. I don't. Okay. batting a million here tonight. So suffice it to say, it just looks like, you know, a little connector with a hole in the middle, and you plug this in, and it's got some metal contacts, which, just like, you know, a VGA cable or any other socketed and male pin sort of arrangement, actually crimp onto whatever's plugged in, and it gets held in place. And so those two ports would be holes usually on the metal plinth. So the plinth is the piece of metal that the turntable, usually the motor, is attached to. So the turntable platter goes down over the plinth, right? Underneath the plinth is like where all of the electronics, or, you know, tube amp or whatever would be, and motor for platter or overhead or both or whatever. So yeah, you would generally just plug these into the two socket connectors for them, and it's a mono head. So this is simply forming a, you know, a full connection with not only this wiring, but with the single coil that is directly underneath my finger, like in there. Basically, it's right in there. So to get these apart, and this is, by the way, a Presto 5C. And I'm trying to remember, there was some, I don't know, some Boardwalk Empire or something. I don't know, even recently-ish, there was something that had some old-timey stuff. I think it probably was that had like a phone call being recorded by, like, you know, old-school bureau agents, and they were using a transcription turntable, and it had one of these on there. It was a, you know, it was a 5C arrangement, Presto lathe. And so anyway, a lot of people frown on these because they aren't as well made as the other models, the 1C or the 1D. There's also a 1B, which is kind of goofy. It's not that nice, but it's like sort of the predecessor design to the C and D. Anyway, this guy, as I went over in another video, and I will show you as I take it apart, doesn't have a real great tension mechanism. It doesn't have a real great centering mechanism. Now, unlike the double spring and knife edge pivot that's in the mono head, the 1C and the 1D. And so I've gone over this also in my prior video. Every mono cutter head has a couple of basic components. They have something that holds the cutting stylus, and we're going to call that the armature, right? And that armature has to move. It has to go like this. And so it has to be somehow mounted on something that we're going to call the pivot, right? So there's an armature. That armature has a pivot mechanism. Some pivots are nicer than others. Some are achieved in totally different ways. Like in the Grampian, it's a torsion bar system. Unlike in the Prestos, where it's a knife edge, and in other heads where it's sort of two sockets, and this thing sort of does this rolling mechanism inside of two sockets. So there's like arms, and there's reciprocal round sockets, and usually there's a piece of rubber. And so that's what we're going to find inside of here. As we get this apart, we're going to first see the main damper, which is the obvious thing. But that's usually not the problem in these heads. The problem is always they sound like crap eventually, because the dampers that are really hard to get at, that you essentially have to take the whole head apart to get to, are originally made of actual rubber, you know, like real rubber, and not synthetic or a synthetic blend. And they turn brittle over the years. And so once they turn brittle, this head will just sound horrible. Once they're brittle and like actually sort of shake out of there, then it's just pieces of metal that are tapping against each other, and it really sounds bad. So that's the main problem with these heads, is getting, not only rewiring and going in doing the other things that I've mentioned in my prior video, which is cleaning anything that involves, cleaning any parts that are involved in the EM system, making sure that there's really nice clean surfaces, because anything that's on stuff like pull pieces will actually degrade their performance. It just does. You can look up, and the thing that you want to look up is what's called magnetic absorption. Not transmission even, but that has something to do with it too. But almost all materials you can, at some point or other, if you do your digging, find a measurement for, you know, not only like how much something will absorb, but you know how much like you know, there's a there are several magnetic ratings for like different metals, right? And one of them is absorption, and so that's what you want to look at when you're starting to think about this stuff. But it's not just metals, it's anything, air as well. You know, that's like, air is a really horrible transmissive media for magnetic flux, and so that's why, you know, two magnets really want to attract each other, but only when they're close by. And when you get them like not even that far away, there's nothing. There's like nothing, and that's because air is a really horrible if you had a piece of steel bar in between here, then it would go clink, even though this one's that, you know, still the same distance away. And right now there's nothing. If you had something that actually transmitted, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about if I have these two magnets and they're close to each other, and I've got like on some of these, because I've used them for different R&D things, and I've put them in place and pulled them off several times, you can see not only are their coatings somewhat messed up, but there's also some residual glue. Well, guess what? That residual glue actually impedes their function, will absorb, will not allow the transmission through of the flux as efficiently as two very clean magnets. So keep that in mind when you're doing your own R&D work or working on cutter heads. That's why I'm really obsessive about cleaning the internal parts that have something to do with flux. And in this particular head, it's a big metal block that's underneath the cover, basically right underneath my finger. That really is the huge pull piece, and it's as in other things, it's made of many layers that have been laminated together and riveted together. I think this one's riveted. I don't remember, or is it just, no, I think that there are pins that are driven through, if memory serves, and as well as the lamination. Lamination is important too. You can't just have the bare metal touching bare metal. You have to have something in between in order for the pull pieces to do what they're doing. And in that case, it's exactly for the reason why I just described. You want some absorption. Anyway, long and the short of it is, we're going to start to take this thing apart. And oh yeah, I was explaining the different components. So armature, that holds the stylus. Armature's on a pivot. Pivots are made different ways in different heads. It's kind of the cheaper ones, like the Recordios, those little tiny things, are similar-ish to this in that it's like this cheap sort of, you know, I've got two rounded arms that go into two rounded sockets and some pieces of rubber inside of there. Versus I've got two really nice springs that are like, you know, I can adjust it so they're perfectly balanced, as in the 1Cs and the 1Ds. Or, you know, very sophisticated spring systems like what's inside of a Neumann SX, or, you know, Westrex head, or, you know, like my own head, or anybody else's that's a, you know, actual established professional making heads. So let's get this guy open. First thing I'm going to do is just remove these, I think, or at least show you how they come off. I do have to use the soldering iron to actually remove, so let's get that sort of set up here. Oops, wrong way. So my good old Weller. doubt I'm gonna have anybody, but if anybody does join me, hey, how's it going? And once again, I am Todd Mariano, opcode 66, doing neat stuff. So these just have a little screw on them, basically a nut. So, and it's a knurled nut, which is nice. It's got some knurling on it, so it's fancy, old school. It's also a little rusty, I see. Oh, cool. Okay, there's no solder on these. Awesome. It's just wire. So I don't need that quite yet. So I will turn it off just to save electricity, but we will need it eventually. Sometimes people like sort of use this as a solder well, like a socket. Yes, and so these are soldered in, sometimes not. Usually the ends of the wires are tinned, so one wasn't, this one is, so it's a little stiffer. The other one wasn't really, or it just wore down. So now they are both off, and what I'm going to do is, immediately, I'm going to use his parts bag even. It doesn't look like it has any holes in it. I don't think. Nope, so and use his parts bag that he sent me, the stylus in, to start to collect the parts, because you do not want to lose them. That sucks. Let's grab a screwdriver. And if you actually saw my last stream, I didn't have this one, so I went and got a new set and have replacements. The one that I did not have, which is convenient. This should be good, I think, for starters. These guys. So depending on how hard it's going to be to get the this cover off, we'll see. Let's start with the long one just to give you torque. Oh no, it's already moving. So somebody had this open. I think client mentioned that he took it apart, or took the cover off just to look at the damper. And there it is, and it does. I mean, visually it looks a little warped, right? It's hardish. It's still got some life to it though. What you're looking for with this is if it's gummy, right? Which it is definitely gummy. Ones that are in bad shape are really discolored. But what I'm seeing immediately it's going to be a problem is right there, because and again, I went over this in my prior video. Though it looks nice around this guy, which is cool, it's really the connection between the armature and the damper right here that is critical. And if you don't have good connection, then you really don't have, as the armature pivots, right? And so basically right here it's going to be doing this sort of thing so that the stylus can be doing this, right? So it's pivoting right here. And if the top of that pivot isn't fully connected to the gummy part, then it's not really doing anything. If it is connected to the gummy part, then as it turns, the gummy part does this sort of slow following, if you will. You can almost imagine it. You can sort of see what I'm trying to demonstrate, but that's exactly the function of that. And so you need something that has some play to it. And so different types of rubber that you might replace this with, and I'll tell you what I use is either a silicone rubber or the type of rubber, black rubber that's used for gaskets. You can go to like auto parts store and buy a sheet of gasket rubber that's thick, that's just a blank sheet, or you can order it online and you can slice dampers from that. You can also, like I said, use silicone rubber, and that has the advantage of it being a synthetic rubber, which is what this is as well. This is not a real rubber, right? This part is not. As we go deeper, there will be. But this part is essentially a type of synthetic, I think it's a blend actually, I'm not exactly sure. But it's similar-ish to like, if you recall back in the day, roller skates had like a brake on the front that was sort of this almost type of color and translucence to it, right? Or the harder version of that would be the actual wheels for roller skates. This is similar to that compound. It's just more gummy, but it's that sort of stuff. So that's also a big secret, right? Secrets. But not really, because if you just think about these things, and actually this is something that Flo, you know, once upon a time, many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, he answered an email or two of mine. Not that, actually, more than that. He was a nice guy in some, you know, in that respect. He actually did answer some questions and stuff. But he gave me a very good piece of wisdom that I took moving forward in trying to decipher and reverse engineer all of this crap. And it was actually really awesome. So Flo, hey, thank you for doing that, to, you know, for pointing this out, which is, and it's funny too. You know, I was like, well, what sort of rubber do you think the original, not these, but the 1C or 1D dampers are? He's like, I don't know. I don't really do mono head work. And, you know, they were made like, you know, like 50 years ago. How many different types of rubber did they really have back then, right? Just like in a prior video, I was discussing what I think, you know, the glues that they were using to hold the coils onto the pole pieces is like, and what a modern substitute would be. That's exactly what I, you know, used that little kernel of knowledge, that little piece of advice from Flo going into all of that. Well, I mean, what did they really have as options back then, right? Same with machining. You know, these sorts of things were made before you really had CNC control. So a lot of this stuff was like manually milled, you know, or forged and then milled. But I mean, like by real people, you know, operating machines. So there was some variance in parts, right? That's not the point. The point that I'm trying to make is, how many different ways did they really have to do things back in the day? And the answer is not as many as they do nowadays, as you have nowadays. So don't overcomplicate it, right? Don't make it harder than it is. And I think really that's what Flo was trying to say to me was, you know, don't make it harder than it is, because this stuff wasn't rocket science per se. And it represents a lot of things, a lot of manufacturing and a lot of concepts. Really, final record cutting technology is sort of, it's piggybacked from a lot of other industries. It's same as any audio. I mean, really, you know, all of us running audio, you know, mixing boards really owe it to the phone company, you know, or like radio broadcast companies from days ago. So I mean, a lot of our technology is a combination of other industries. And so if you look at how certain other things that were similar were made back in the day, that will tell you how these were made. Because there really wasn't, it's not like people were doing a lot of engineering specifically for, at least not mono heads, you know. Maybe for stereo heads, there was definitely work done there. But I mean, for this stuff, it really, again, it's sort of, wouldn't have existed if other industries hadn't, you know, existed, right? It was easy to reapply either, again, machining or materials or concepts from other stuff into doing audio gear, and more especially these cutter heads. So all that being said, here's the first thing that you want to do with these heads is don't use a regular screwdriver on this nut. The slots on it are not deep enough, and also they're very wide. And unless you have a really specialized spanner tool, which you probably don't, and even if you have that, it's easy to slip as you're turning because, you know, it's not like it's huge. So if the screw itself isn't huge and the slots are not very deep, which these are not, I'm trying to see if I can get an angle which is going to show you that. But the slots are really just sort of very shallow. And so here's the secret. And this is something that I just figured out. Like one day as I was trying to get this off in frustration, I was just like, you know what? Let me try this. And it works. And in fact, I just, sort of personally discovered what's actually a known thing. So it's not like I made this up or anything. This is a known thing. So what you do is you use a piece of steel, a rigid piece of steel, which is what this guy is, and there's all sorts of tools like this or things, that have a rigid, thin piece of steel. And you use that as a screwdriver, right? And so this is huge and easy to hold on to, and it's not going to slip, and it's not going to damage either the screw or any of the other parts. And so that's what you use. And so these things usually get corroded in there because they're brass, right? And the brass, any brass with oxygen and humidity and other things in the air is going to have a little chemistry party, and you're going to end up with tarnish, right? And especially if somebody's touched stuff. And so it's like down into the socket, even into the threadings. And so this thing is usually stuck. So normally I see these guys, and this thing is just chewed up. Not only are the grooves, the slots effed, but like somebody's tried to take it off with some sort of a pair of pliers or something. And though that may work, it's going to really chew that guy up. And so the long and the short of that is, if you ruin that screw, someone's going to have to machine a new one, because it doesn't just hold that down. It's what the other screw that I just removed that holds the cover goes into. So that is not only holding the damper down, it is also the screw post for this screw that the cover goes on, or that holds the cover on. So you don't want to really ruin that. Again, somebody like me would have to machine a replacement. Oh boy. So I just dropped that screw. I'm gonna find it real quick. So excuse me for a moment. Always fun. Okay. Oh, puppy. Hi, Bob. Can you come to join us? Hey, Bobby. Let me see if I can get him. And only him. Hey, hi, Bobby. Hi. Okay. He's like, I don't know what you're doing. You're talking to yourself or something. There's Bobby. My husky that I actually got from a pound out here in LA. There was a breeder who was unlicensed who got busted, and all of his dogs ended up in the pound, and so this guy was being held for evidence, and I waited for him to become available, and finally he was, and hey, now we're buddies. Now we're friendly friends. So I'm going to put this, now that I've found it, dropped it and then found it, where I should have put it all along, which is in the parts bag. Hey, don't lick stuff off the floor. No. My cat is incontinent these days and doesn't make it to the litter box, and yeah, he tries to clean the floor for me. So basically I'm just going to use this, like I said, as a screwdriver. This guy is stuck. I'm gonna need something thicker than this guy. Oh, no, okay. So what I had to do was just, instead of being out here on the more flexible end, I just had to choke up a bit. And once I choked up a bit, then I could get enough torque. So I have actually moved it. You can see that the damper is sort of wanting to come with it. So we'll get that out of the way. And so, yeah, now I have, done this in a way that I've not ruined, bit into, damaged any of the, part of the top of the screw. Possibly made a tiny scratch, but, we can live with that. So, all right. There he is. You can actually see, like, towards the top of this screw, there's like bits of material there, and that's, parts of like the damper that sort of got just in there over time. You can see it's the bottom of the damper is missing a little bit of material. I mean, that's just from, like, if this thing's been traveled around or whatever, right? Also, too, as the bottom of it moves, some of it does flex up here, and so that, is going to also cause some material to creep, and then, naturally, it's just what happens with screws is stuff just finds its way in, so it's actually was on the threads. Again, mixing with metal and becoming a whole little chemistry orgy. And so we're gonna put this in here. Yeah, that was my VJ name, was Pixel8. Just flashed on the screen right there. All right, so this, believe it or not, is also a screwdriver. In case you didn't know, now you know. All right, and then if anybody is actually joining me, awesome, thank you. I really appreciate you tuning in. So the next challenge, which a lot of people don't understand how to do, and again, usually use a pair of pliers, which you shouldn't do, is how do you separate the damper from the armature? And the answer is that is actually a nut. So the armature is threaded at the end, and there are, as you can see, two little holes in that nut. And so what you do is you go ahead and you use a pair of tweezers. Oh my God, did somebody actually, holy cow, this would be a first. Oh, super intense as in, is it too loud? I'm sorry, should I turn it down? Ooh, oh. Here, I can do that. Here, this maybe is better. Yeah, I apologize for that. I'll have to figure it out. I just moved my mic a little bit further away, so maybe that'll help. I'm gonna say, hey, sorry about that. Okay. So, that's the first time someone has actually live chatted. That's awesome. And I'm sorry if my voice is intense. I apologize. So what you're going to do is use a pair of pliers here, or pliers, a pair of tweezers, and stick them in the holes. And if it doesn't turn, easily, then don't try to force it. And we can take the head apart more and throw this into the ultrasonic bath and get it to free up that way. But I noticed that it actually just turned. So I'm not going to have necessarily an issue with that, I don't think. The other thing you got to be careful of if you're trying to save the damper is as you're using this, you're going to inevitably stab the damper. And so sort of do it in little bits. Don't try to do it all at once because you're going to bring both of them with. And if you're trying to save the damper, you're inevitably going to be stabbing it as you take this guy apart. Ugh, I need to grab my grab my headset here. I need some magnification because I can't. Okay, there we go. So again, you know, unless you're super careful, you are probably going to bring the damper with a bit. So just be mindful of that. Try to work around that. There is a flattened side usually on these guys, and I do see that this one has that. But I wouldn't, you know, again, I would not really use a pair of pliers here. Client wants me to make a new damper, so I'm not really particularly worried about saving this one per se. But, you know. So there we go. So I just, you know, I tried not to push too deep, but deep enough to make sure that I had enough bite on that nut. You're basically just using the tweezers as spanners. And again, I can't stress this enough. If it didn't give, don't try to force it. Leave it be, and I can explain how you can get it off in a minute. So you can take the head apart, you know, and not do it in this exact order, right? If I had found that that just wasn't going to work, I would work around this damper. And I would get the rest of the head apart, and I would free the armature, and then I would put all of that into my ultrasonic bath, you know, damper and all, and I would let the bath free that up, and then I would try it again. But I was able to very carefully instead turn this guy off. And again, using a pair of tweezers in those little tiny holes, which is what they're for. So this little brass nut is going to go into the parts bag. This is going to just go in the cover. And like I said, I'm going to make a clone for this person, so I don't particularly need it. So there you go. Now we got that off. You can see the horseshoe. What holds the horseshoe in place is this guy right here. So this is just a little piece of bent steel, right, that goes on those two, and you can see there are bends in it, and so it basically sort of goes like that, yeah. And so this goes in the parts bag. So now this guy can come off, right? But of course we're not going to just pull it off. We're going to pull it off and be safe with it. Even though we are going to be not only measuring the flux, I should say the Gauss, we will also be recharging it. So that will be in another stream. But as I've mentioned in a prior video, you just want to put something steel across the poles. That piece of steel, you know, if you buy like a horseshoe magnet, usually you'll have this bar across it, and it's called a keeper or a minder, something along those lines, right? But once you've got something to complete, and this is funny, to complete the magnetic circuit, because it is actually just like electricity, it does form a circuit, right? And so you want to complete that circuit. When it's in the head, the pole piece is what completes the circuit. In stereo heads, it's not necessarily like this. Those magnets are different, and typically in a stereo head, those magnets are embedded in a piece of steel. So, you know, once you remove the coil or start to take the head apart, usually it's one assembly that has both the magnet and the piece of steel. So you don't have to, you know, it's not necessarily like this, but mono heads, yeah, with these horseshoes, yes. And so what I'm going to do right now, really quick, is just put this on this steel housing right here, right? Because this housing is made of steel, and that will be fine. And I will deal with that, like I said, in another video where I'll actually measure its strength, I have a Gauss meter that is actually AC/DC. And again, sounds like electricity, right? What that means is it can measure a field that is fixed, which is like a magnet that doesn't change. It's got a north and a south, and it doesn't fluctuate. Or it can measure a field that's generated by a coil with a sinusoidal waveform, where there is a magnetic flux field that is changing, that has a delta to it, and that delta can be measured, and that is the strength of an AC magnetic field, which would be an electromagnetic. You could also create an AC magnetic field by having a magnetic array on something that turns. And so that's how you make a generator generally, is you have a magnetic array that turns inside of coils or something along those lines, or coils that turn inside of magnets. Or point of the matter is, you can create an alternating magnetic field with permanent magnets as long as you involve some sort of a mechanical arrangement to create that motion. Anyway, okay, back to this. I'm gonna lose my voice before the end of this. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna just remove the wires. I think that's probably gonna be the easiest thing to do. So there are wires that are going, let me grab my thinliest screwdriver here. So these are the leads from the coil, and you can see that they are nicely wrapped. I will just use regular heat shrink for that, There might be a better thing to use, but that's what I've got. So I will be using heat shrink for the heads that I'm doing. And so this is just basically, your terminal block, right? You've got your two connectors on this side, pin connectors, you've got your two pin connectors on the other side. This is very similar to a lot of heads. A lot of heads have this sort of arrangement where somewhere there is a block and there are pins. And in fact, even on the Neumann, there is, it's not pins, it's like little solder pads. On an SX, if you were to take apart one of the channels, like the drive and the feedback wires actually run to these little pads, and the other end, the coil wires go on like the other side of the pad, and they just both solder to the same pad. And of course touch each other, so the solder's not acting as the conduit of the electron flow. It's just acting as glue. Anyway, back to this. So in all old school appliances like TVs and stuff, you would usually see like a block of connectors, and they would connect external connectors maybe to internal things, or just act as like what we would normally modernly know as a circuit board. Back in the day, there would just be a strip of connectors, and you would just start to connect things to the same pin on that row of connectors, or lug or strip or whatever, and that would form a circuit. Right? Before they made circuit boards, you just had a bunch of connectors to connect wires to, and this is the simplest form of that, if you will. In the 1Cs and 1Ds, I showed this in a previous video, it's a taller block, and the pins are coming out vertically instead of being lateral like this, or flat against the back. They're coming out this way, and you wrap around those pins, and there's just two pins. So in that case, you're actually touching the external wiring to the internal wiring. In this case, there's a piece of metal that is in between. So I don't really like that as much, to be honest with you. I like when they're both touching each other, instead of having some piece of steel whose, characteristics you're not, we don't know exactly, right? That could also age inappropriately. So my preference would be to have direct connection and solder these two wires together, but that's just not how these are made. So let's get that stuff off, and then we'll go deeper. This is the pole piece that I was talking about, that is made from laminated pieces of steel. You can't really tell that from right now because that's a cover. This is a piece of corroded, like, this is a synthetic rubber, I think. This is on there though, that's not coming off. Usually these can come off, but man, that's flaking off hard. So that's gonna be fun. That I replaced with a piece of, it's like a black silicone latex sheet, that I just cut a piece from. It's very thin. I can show you guys that. I ordered it off of eBay. But this is the whole piece that's laminated behind it. And so this part locks the armature in. And before, when I was saying that there are sort of rounded cavities that the armature goes into, and there are pieces of rubber, that's what's directly under my fingers, right there and right there. So we'll get those out in a minute. Sometimes those screws that you see are rusted, are a bear to get out. So again, sometimes I will have to just take this whole block and put it into the bath and then try to work those screws out. But we'll see. They might just look bad. I don't know. We'll find out. Right, so all we're going to do here is just, it's not going to work. A little closer though, maybe. Nope. And I'm just doing this in place. I mean, you could unscrew it if you wanted to, but sometimes it doesn't always work out optimally. Especially if you're like actually trying to save the more delicate enameled wire that's on the other end. It's usually best to not take this thing out at this point. But yeah, so, and once I've done that, this wire, this cloth covered cable from years and years and years ago already smells. But once you start to apply heat to the end of it here and you melt, or incinerate some of this frayed end, it really smells disgusting, even through a mask. So I usually, I will save this stuff and put it in the box. I gotta imagine people just throw it away on the other end, but I don't want it. This is that black stuff that was breaking off the front, and this is exactly why I usually use a little piece of paper to make it easier to collect things like that and throw it away midstream, and now I've got a clean surface again. Boom. So that's why I do that. Obviously, since I'm going to be doing a full rebuild of this head, I don't need to save any of this stuff, so I'm just going to get rid of it at this point. There's no need to be concerned with being real gentle or anything here. It also would have been handier for me to have a larger tip on the soldering iron. Yeah. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna cheat it. Okay, so that screw turned pretty good. I am gonna take this out real quick. This crusty. And I'm just gonna clip those because again, it doesn't matter. We're not saving anything here. I will be making the coils for the Presto 1D that I have, so people interested in that, but I will not be showing this one because this is what I call an air coil or a formless coil. There's no bobbin involved, it's just a coil, and they're more difficult to make. It's not that I don't want to show you guys, I don't really care, it's just that I don't really want to try to stream it live, to be honest with you, because they're just a pain in the butt to make. And I might have to start over, and it just might be boring, and it's just, yeah, they're a pain to make. When you make a coil that's just wire and nothing else, no form that you're winding on, it's a pain. So we're gonna put this stuff again in the bag. I am gonna clean some of this crap off first though. Oh, puppy. And Bobby's getting huffy because he wants to do something other than sit and listen to me. Might also help if I turn my the heat up on my soldering iron. But yeah, this would have been easier with a larger tip. Ugh, and this stuff just doesn't really want to melt. What's on here is the remnants of the enameled wire, as well as some very old solder, as well as a bunch of whatever oxidized crap. Whatever made it in this guy. I'm trying to melt the solder so I can unravel this, because it's sometimes I can just get it to slide off, you know, but this is not happening. Make it. What did I do with? Okay. Oh, here we go. Finally, I got it to unravel. Okay, let's clean it up. Oh, I don't know if you can actually see or not, but there is a fair amount of just crud on the terminals. And the actual steel itself is, you know, the if it was, it looks like it was plated, or it's stainless. Stainless is not a great, it's not really the best thing to use. And if it was plated, the plating's gone and it's just starting to corrode. And so again, I have doubts about whether this is really the best arrangement for a connector like that. I prefer wire on wire, but that's just me. It's dirty, and it made the tip of my soldering iron pretty dirty. So now we got that stuff off. And you can see it is just basically a couple pieces of bent steel running through, you know, a block that I think is like Catalan or Bakelite without additives, just the resin compound. All right, get my tools out of the way here and do my little trick of, you know, all of the bits of solder and stuff. Oops, that just came out. I can just really quick toss in the trash can and clean surface again. So now we're gonna go in and we're gonna actually free up this block. And you can see, maybe you can, maybe you can't. Or yeah, see the enameled wire peeking through right there. That's the coil. So you see a little tiny hint of red right forward to my index finger. And that is the enameled wire. I'm going to use a longer screwdriver for more torque on these guys, because sometimes they are stuck. And that was not too bad. And then also another thing, a little hint, you'll always see me with my thumb right by the tip of the screwdriver. And what I'm doing is, instead of just sort of doing this and you tend to slip off the screw, you can use your thumb as a guide. And as you come around, you can sort of recenter the screwdriver on the screw on each turn. And that really helps you. Oh, this one's a little stuck. And again, I would not have forced too much. I know when you should stop. Just from doing this so much, you know, I know the point of no return, so to speak, for either ruining a screw or getting it loose. And I will never risk ruining a screw. So here's my little thumb trick. Right, I could feel it was slipping off, so I'm like pushing it right back on, basically, right? Each turn. That is a word to the wise, and this works for almost any, you know, any size medium to small screw. That is a great trick. You can also see that I need to clip my thumbnails, all my fingernails. So sorry about that. It's a little gross. I will tell you though, I've been doing a lot of stuff. I've been rehabbing this one machine and stuff, and it's like it's beneficial to not have your nails trimmed too much when you're doing a lot of machining work and stuff, because like the tips of your fingers just start to hurt, you know. And if you're already doing a lot of like manual stuff with your hands, it sucks. And also too, like when you're doing a lot of things, it's handier to sort of sometimes have a little bit of nail than not. So if I don't have to see anybody and I don't have to be pretty for nobody, I generally don't clip my nails real short, because they're actually, it's helpful, believe it or not. Anyway, so this guy, you know, both of these came out. These are the long screws that hold the pull piece onto the back. I might be TMIing, I guess, with you guys, but the point I'm trying to make is it's not because I'm, you know, a hermit and I don't care about what I look like. It's because it actually helps sometimes to have a little bit of nails, especially if you're doing a lot of work with your hands. So I'm going to try to get these guys out. This is not the best screwdriver for that. This one is. So what's the difference? Well, this one's got a little bit thin layer of, you know, at the end, the actual tool end. It's not as brutal of a head, so it's not going to slip off as easily. It's not going to, you know, it's got less chance of ruining the top of that screw, basically. And it's also a bit longer, which means a bit more torque. And also, I tend to find that the rubber handle like this, you've got more fine-tuned control than something like this, because you can see what's happening as I'm turning it. It's like blink, blink, blink. It's like, this is almost a gear. It's like a 4-tooth gear or something, you know, like, versus this, I got way more, you know, fine-tuned control over the rotation of something that is handled like this versus handled like this. So it really matters, man. Like each one of these screwdrivers is useful for some part of this head, and you should use the appropriate one for the appropriate screw. That's another secret to taking anything apart, you know, it's having the right tooling to take it apart. And in this case, it's a variety of screwdrivers. In other cases, it's having like weird, you know, crescent wrenches or whatever, you know, some kind of a weird torque wrench or something. So this is what we're going to do. Okay, good. So those also did not, even though everything is, as you can see, got a layer of filth on it. And that could be just corrosion, you know, oxidization of things, rust. These heads, sometimes people store them in their basement, and their basement gets flooded, so it could be things like that. You know, environmental, I will call that. All sorts of reasons why there's stuff on the inside here. So we've got these two screws again, everything always directly into here so that you don't lose anything. And I mean, yeah, these heads really aren't terribly complex. So, you know, the only thing left inside of the backing is this little piece of insulation that is just to keep, and sometimes it's sort of, yeah, I definitely did. Awesome. What I was just about to say is sometimes it's so brittle that it flakes apart, which is what you see just happen. So I'm going to have to make my own version of that. But what it does is it keeps the it ensures that these two connector pieces don't form a short circuit on the actual backing here. So that's what prevents that from happening. This material is non-conductive. It's also heat resistant. So, you know, you can use something like chitin tape, that sort of yellowish thin tape. You could put that on the back and that would work. There are other things that I could cut like that. The material that I use as a replacement for this stuff, which is a black It's not latex. I think it's silicone. It's like a black silicone sheet. Or maybe it is latex. I don't know. I don't remember. I'll probably post links to stuff, or maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, that little sheet right there, same material could be used to go in the back there. The pain is to cut it out to that specific shape. I don't know if you saw it, but it's sort of a pain to recreate. It's not something I could really machine easily, so you got to cut it out. So that's fun. So this, all the parts will go in my ultrasonic bath, and then I will actually polish them. This is and unlike the 1Ds, the 1Cs, like I said, start with a P, a letter P, and the 1Ds do not. The 5Cs start with 5C, and then a four number serial number. And there's no variance there. They're just all of them are that. And so this will wash up and then get polished. I won't go too nuts about polishing this because it doesn't really have anything to do with the EM flux distribution. This guy does. And like this, what I'm holding in my hand is like that's it. I mean, like that, literally, that's it. Unlike in a 1C or 1D where there's multiple pull pieces and blah blah blah. Like this is it. It's one module. It's a big, laminated part. You can see that it's sort of different, right? There's parts that are chromed, and there are parts of it that are not chromed in the middle. It's a sandwich. All right, let me get this part. In this particular case, I will be using the one screwdriver that I didn't have last time, which is the smaller version of this guy. And so this, again, nice and long for torque, the right size for the slot on this particular screw. Good, okay, that was not seized up. Okay, 2 out of 4 not seized. And if anybody is actually joining me, hey, thank you for checking it out. Or if you're going to watch this after the fact, thank you for watching. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. It is YouTube/opcode66, same as here on Twitch. I need the followers. I really am trying to get my channel to monetization, so that would be awesome. I would really appreciate it if you would go ahead and subscribe. If you like what you see, if you want me to continue to show you how to do these things. Because there will be a cutoff point at some point. If I don't get there, I will just stop. So if you want to see even more, if you want to know how my BLDC platter motor works, get me to monetization. Please subscribe. Okay. I will stop shilling for myself. So what you just saw drop, right, is this. Let me collect the screws really quickly before I lose them. And let me show you all the crap that just fell out. So we'll get to that. I will save the crap. The crap is the rubber that I was talking about just a minute ago. That is the desiccated, decayed, dead, unreclaimable, defunct rubber. And so you can actually see parts of it in here. So there are, let me grab these guys. There are bits of it, like just, it almost looks like glue now. Gross. That's always fun to clean off. And you need to get that really clean because that's actually, that at one point in time, that was a precision grind that was put in there. So that is a circular grind, and it can be again. You got to get all that crap out. So that is some of the remnants of the rubber. Some of it's down here and the rest of it is inside of here. So what you do, by the way, let me back up even further. So these are the two leads from the coil. Coil is sitting inside of that slot. And then of course every coil has a hole in the center of it, right? You wind around something. So in this case, the armature has a fin. That's what is right there. And that fin is just simply interacting here with the flux from the coil. So that, you know, the entire armature is made of steel, that fin is made of steel, and it becomes part of the electromagnetic circuit here. The M and the EM combined to cause a flux delta change in the flux, which will force movement in the armature. And actually, what's funny is, let me take one more second. The exact opposite is how a guitar pickup works. In that respect, you've got an electromagnetic system, you've got a piece of steel, and the piece of steel moves, which causes a disruptance in the electromagnetic system that can be monitored. And not just monitored, unlike an oscilloscope, monitored and heard. And that's how a pickup works. So this is actually sort of the opposite of a pickup. You're forcing movement in the steel from the flux instead of causing a change in the flux by moving the steel, which would be a guitar. Anyway, or also old school, not modern ones, but old school pickups, actual phono pickups worked. They were the exact opposite of this, precisely. I mean, literally, they were not made to be driven, so the coils and stuff were different and the poles were different, but there is almost literally, if you look at a basic diagram of an old school pickup, electrical pickup, and a mono cutter head, they look almost exactly identical. So in fact, if you have the AES Green Book on playback, you'll see some diagrams in there that look almost exactly like the inside of a cutter head, and they explain to you all of this stuff, but from the reverse perspective. So by the way, anybody that told you on the trolls, don't read the Green Book, there's nothing in there, they were lying to you for that exact reason. They don't want you to understand some of this stuff. Anyway, here's the rest of the rubber. And yeah, I'm gonna, in order to free this guy. Oh, I didn't, sorry, it's not just here's the rest of the rubber. Here's the rest of the rubber. Here's, you know, what I was describing earlier that forms the pivot. The armature is going in and is interacting with, same as in the 1Ds and 1Cs, you've got these two pieces that go, two parts of the armature, what I call the arms, you know, that go, literally go into the holes of the coil, the two coils. There you go. So it's a different arrangement, but it's the same principles, essentially. Another thing that ends up happening is, you know, this tension bar, which is the tension mechanism that I was talking about before, there are two screws that allow you to align it, and what you're aligning is the fin, right? And so you don't want the fin to be too close to one side, you don't want it to be too close to the other side, you want it to be exactly in the middle. And how would you know that? Because you can't really see it once you've got everything together. You can sort of, but you're going, you know, you're going definitely by hearing it. So there will, you can tell when it's in the right place just by running audio through it and making that adjustment. You can also sort of see it here. On some other heads, there's actually like a little window for you to see into the head to be able to make that adjustment. Because that part of the armature is actually not really visible otherwise. So there's like this little tiny window through the cover. I can't remember what those are called. They're not the Pierre Clementes. It's something else. Like I've done a bunch of them. I have videos of those repairs posted, but yeah, the name escapes me for whatever reason. Sometime maybe I will also release, I have a cache of images from almost every cutter head that I've ever repaired. And so, you know, I could basically make a book from those, you know. At some point I will probably be releasing that data too, making it public, but I don't know. This is being held in not only by the corroded rubber, which as you see is actually sort of coming out. on one end behind this nut, literally behind this nut. Oops. You can see that the rubber actually worked its way out. So like it's all up in there. That's jacked. But then also this piece of what was rubber is also gluing that in there. So we're gonna have to break it off and see if I can remove this. If not, I'll just put it in the bath and the two parts will separate. But let me see if I can get this stuff off really quick. See, another reason to have fingernails. Ow! Fudge. I could use tweezers or a screwdriver, but you will also ruin the finish of the metal that way, so I don't suggest doing that. So again, it's a perfectly valid reason to have some fingernails. Is to do something like this and not mess up the work, the part. There we go. So once I actually disintegrated enough of that, it was the cement that was holding that finally together. You can see how cruddy this thing is, man. It's, or maybe you can't, I don't know. But it is pretty cruddy. All in that joint. And those two joints should be perfectly, round surface on perfectly round surface with a nice piece of rubber in between, right? Instead, it's a really crusty thing on a really crusty thing, and so there's your problem, right? As the old car talk guys would be like, right? There's your problem. Is this movement, this pivot is everything. That's if anything impedes this pivoting motion, that's going to show up as distortion, noise, an incorrect tracing of your electrical impulse, of your electrical signal. So, again, having those two joints clean, free of debris, and with fresh rubber is actually the most important thing. The head will sound great without this thing on, believe it or not. Oh, I forgot. Sometimes there might be a metal collar. Sometimes these generally don't. I think I'm thinking of the RCAs that have an additional metal sleeve in there, not collar, sleeve. Why I say RCAs is because the RCA MI blah 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 blah. I can't remember the four numbers that follow, 4189 or something like that. There are RCA heads that look different on the outside, but they are like the exact same mechanism on the inside. The same block like this, the exact same armature. The only difference is the tension bar is across the front like this instead of behind it like that. So that's the only difference really. So these heads, these 5Cs are almost the exact same thing as those RCAs, just FYI. Same sort of air coil arrangement. Same sort of problem with this rubber deteriorating and causing really bad issues in sound reproduction. You can see though that the fin is nice and shiny. Why would that be? Again, because of what I was talking about before. Anything that really is involved in the EM system needs to be clean metal. So this block, once I'm done with it, it looks a little shiny now, but once I'm done with it, it's going to be sparkly. It's actually surprising how nice these can clean up sometimes. They'll come out even worse than this, and then I'll clean it up and it'll be just amazingly bright. This, not so much. It's a different type of metal, and it's not been plated or anything. So this will always have a dull color to it. It will become shinier, but it will always be dull. But it now won't have scratches on it because I didn't use a screwdriver to get this stuff off. Don't do that. If you find that this won't come off, again, just put the whole thing in the bath and it will break up in the bath and you'll be able to work it off then. It does get into these little recesses. All right, so because this is not a perfectly flat surface. There are these little indentions right there. So yeah, just gonna work it all out with your finger. I'll put this in the bag. We'll work some of this off the armature and do the same thing. Put it in the bag. This part of the armature, as you can see, is brass, and it is just not only the mechanism to allow the screws to create the tension on this piece of steel rod, the rod being the flexible tension part, but also being the thing that allows you to center, right, and then hold it into a centered place as good as you can. But again, you know, there can be some flexing there, and the stylus can be sort of cocked off one way or another. It's not the same, centering mechanism, nice mechanism, as the 1Cs and 1Ds. I do prefer it being straight up and down like this. It's less accessible being back behind the magnet like that, you know, deep down in, or not really behind, but in the middle of, but essentially just down in, right? It's less convenient to make the adjustments this way, right? So it's like this. Those are the two holes. But I prefer it. This centers it better than the one that's in the RCA. The one that's in the RCA, like I was saying, is across the front like this, and it's just one screw instead of two screws, and it doesn't really work as good. Those get off of alignment, and you know, like the little piece that's under the one screw will slip a little bit, and so now the stylus is cocked. This mechanism tends to not allow for that as much. So just FYI. This is actually another one of those screw-on nuts. It's not going to come off. And you don't have to take it off. There's no reason. Do not take that one off. There's no reason to. I'm just going to get a little of this crap off. And what I did was I just squeezed a little bit, not too hard, because again, I don't want to scratch anything, but I just wanted to sort of break up that material right there. So I just used the tweezers, but gently. Ugh, this stuff is gross. So it's not going to come off any further, I don't think, right now. I'm just, going to put it in the bath and deal with it that way. But what I was trying to get at before is this part is brass and it doesn't need to be, right? Like the function that it serves has nothing to do with the EM system, so it does not need to be brass. This part is steel, but it's steel not because of EM, it's steel because it's a certain steel composite that is like music wire, right? That is like piano wire essentially, but very much thicker, and but you get the idea. It's a type of steel that can bend and not take the bend. It will snap back. It's a spring type steel versus the type of steel that this part of the armature is made from, which is specific for EM. Okay, so it's a blend of steel. It's a type of steel that's good for channeling electromagnetism, and that is what not only the stylus goes into on this end, but also what stylus screw goes into. So inside of there will be a threaded hole that will take that stylus screw that we removed first. So that goes in there with the rest of the parts. I will pop the coil out of here and show it to you guys, and then that's it. I will do the rest of the restoration work in a different video. So what I did was I just used my tweezers and I just pushed on the coil. And again, we see that the coil has some of the same material on both sides, which not only is non-conductive, so prevents shorts. So in case any of the enamel wire happened to, over the years and movement and stuff, jiggling, that casing might, on that enamel wire might decay. And if you don't have something in between the coil and this block, it will cause a short, right? So that's why you typically find something in between there. Also too, it's just like a sort of a heat barrier as well. And then the third reason is just like why you have lamination between these individual pieces of steel, it's good to have separation of the EM and this piece of metal. So there are many different reasons. So on a magnetic, on most anything that is EM, you usually have like a piece of insulation on something that separates different components. It's something that you will generally find. So this stuff comes off sometimes, sometimes not. This coil is already unwinding, so the coil glue is done. You can see it's just coming apart. What you can do is very methodically, if you've got one of these, now I already know I have a recipe, a cookbook, if you will, for all of the different standard cutter heads that I've worked on. I made notes about how to make their coils, so I know how many turns. But if you wanted to, you could hold this thing very carefully and you could start to manually unwind it, and you could count the turns, and you could make a note to yourself on how many turns there are. You can then take a caliper and you could measure the thickness of the wire, the diameter, and you could look up standard gauge thicknesses, and you could figure out, okay, that must be XYZ gauge of wire. This was done by somebody that doesn't know how to do this. This is not original. I can tell because there really isn't much coil glue. It's falling apart in my hands, and it doesn't have ties on it. So people who do this to make air coils know how to do these little tiny ties, just like I do, and those are not on there. I don't think that this is original. I think that's somebody's handiwork over the years. Which probably explains why the screws weren't that corroded that this was impossible to take apart, because somebody serviced it at one point in time in the past. And there were licensed, Presto service people, and probably the same guy that fixed your radio or your TV back in the day. So there were repairs on these for sure. So I think that was repaired at some point in time. That does not look like a factory coil to me. They're much nicer looking. Usually, so this is going to get cleaned up. I just use my fingernail real quick to try to get some of that crap out, because I just don't want it in the bag with the parts. And that'll be that. So we got that. We got damper, the rest of the case, the parts bag. I'm going to now grab a larger bag and put all of that together. And put it in the box and put it aside for now, and I will do another stream where I continue this work to clean the parts and actually do the rest of the repair and get it to working order, and then also not just do the repair, but do the calibration of it, what I call a bench test. So you'll get to see the entire process for the most part. And I don't think I'm going to show making the coils because it's just a pain in the butt. So the only thing really to clown are the dampers, and the backing material, this insulation stuff, because I'm not saving any of it. Not even this piece, I don't think. Well, actually, this piece could be used, to be honest with you. So maybe I will save it. But that's it. The rest of it's trash. And I will trash the coil. I will keep his wire in case he wants his wire. I guess I divulged it's a guy that I'm doing this work for. I had very few women actually send ahead to me. A couple, but some, like 90% dudes. I've had people all across the globe, which is cool, send me heads from a lot of, I wouldn't say every, but from a lot of countries, and not just like European, all over. So here we go. So, you know, again, what I just used this guy to wipe onto, and now I'm just gonna take this and in the trash, and boom, we got a nice reset work surface, nice and clean. I take all my tools and put them back where they should be. I'm gonna take my soldering iron, which should have been turned off a long time ago, and clean the tip on it real good and retin it. Use some of this stuff to retin it here, and all right. That gets turned off. Put my screwdrivers away real quick, and then we're done. So thank you very much if you joined me live. Thank you very much if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube. Please do subscribe. Hit that, smash that subscribe button like everybody else says. FYI, I will never do Patreon, so don't worry. I will never ever try to pander you guys like that. I would appreciate if you ever want to send me a, you know, like a $5 donation for tooling. I will mention you if you want by name. I will show you exactly the tooling that your money went towards, and I will show you using it somehow. So please, if you want to send a very small pittance of a donation, I would appreciate it, you know, because all of this stuff does cost money. And I don't, you know, I definitely would like to continue to show you guys stuff, but I can't, you know, do it forever, I guess. So please do subscribe. Please, you know, continue to stay tuned to see the rest of the work on these heads, the Presto 1D and this 5C, as well as I will be done with some contract work soon, so I can start to, ooh, my kitty's having diarrhea. So I can start to have more time to work on my lathe again, and so I can show you guys some of, I think, that R&D process, like probably programming some of the automation that needs to be finished up. There's not much, but there's some, so I can maybe show you guys some of that. So until then, as always, you know, be well and take care of yourself. And I really appreciate you, and, you know, being involved with and interested in what I'm doing. And I will see you all next time. Take care. Namaskar.